Hi, we are Debbie and John. We have been married for 23 years and we are going to talk to you today about marriage and finance. I am an accountant and John manages and invests in small companies. We each have our roles in our financial relationship. I manage the checkbook, pay the bills, and John handles the investments. We're pretty compatible in that way. We have three children. This is kind of how we picture them. They have three very different personalities. We view them as a well diversified portfolio. This is how they look today. Obviously, much more grown up. Two are off our payroll and out on their own, and one is in college.
So why finance as a topic? Well, bottom line, it's not an easy thing to talk about, especially with married couples and newly married couples. Unfortunately, 80% of married couples fight about their finances. So we're hopeful that you'll be part of the 20%. So the purpose is to introduce finance and start a conversation between the two of you. Um, understanding that it's not always easy to talk about money. Also, finance is related to a lot of other things. It's a kind of a doorway to intimacy between um, two people in a relationship. It has an impact on things like cooperation, generosity, sacrifice, things like that are involved in a relationship. So, um,
Everybody has a money personality. Usually, you have a dominant personality and then a secondary personality. There's an article about this in the information that Joanne emailed to you. As an example, my dominant personality is a flyer. My secondary is saver. John's a mix. He's a spender, risk taker, and security seeker. Knowing this about each other helps us frame our conversations about money and finance and also understand each other a little bit more.
Money is often stressful, but it doesn't have to be. If you understand it and embrace it and get your arms around it, it can be okay. It's an ongoing process. It takes time to understand parts of it, and you'll probably be constantly learning throughout your life. We still are. There's some things like a mortgage or when you need insurance that take extra time to invest in that time and to really understand a specific topic. But I think one thing is clear is you can't completely ignore it. And unfortunately, there's a statistic that most people spend more time planning vacations than their finances, which we hope is not the case for you. And yeah, again, the objective is to start a conversation and get your arms around it to be comfortable with it. So some other specific things in regard to finding peace with money and getting your arms around it. Don't wait for a stress point to talk. Um, that could be too late. Aim for calm, relaxed discussions. Try to limit the alcohol in those involving those discussions. Listen to each other, understand, avoid judgments. Um, be open to sharing your feelings and experiences and hopes about money, and included in that and discussing how your parents dealt with it or your relatives, because that could certainly influence your thought process. Designate roles, like Debbie mentioned before about she handles the checking and I do the investing, and that works well as a team. Be honest with yourself and each other in regard to money. For instance, if you don't think you go out to eat very much, but then you really never go to the food store, like probably something's not adding up there. So if there is something like that you feel like um, it's uncertain, you may want to track that spending. Like how much do we actually spend per month going out to eat? If you really get stuck on a topic, don't hesitate to bring in a third party or perhaps a trusted relative to or friend to help resolve it. And the last point is to try to know your assets and liabilities on an ongoing basis. Assets are whatever you own. Liabilities are what you owe in terms of debt, including credit cards, mortgage, and things like that. and try to track that on a regular basis. The difference between the assets and the liabilities is your net worth, and that's a good measurement to track. Not every week, but maybe every 6 months or at least every year.
So getting into a little more specifics, talking about the spending side of your financial life, it's important to do a budget. There's three methods that you can use. One is the cash method, where if you have the cash, you spend it. If you don't have the cash, you don't spend it. It's a little primitive, but for some people it works. There's also the net worth method. If your net worth that John just defined is going up on a regular basis, you're probably doing okay. You may want to look at some detail by category of where your spending is going to help you understand either why your net worth is not going up or why it's not going up as much as you had hoped. The other more detailed method is looking at categories. You have fixed type expenses like rent or mortgage payment, taxes, utilities, things that you can't really control. That should be 50% of your budget. Your goals, which are things like retirement, saving for a house, saving for a car, that kind of thing, should be 20%. And then the remaining 30% should be flexible spending, clothing, dining out, vacations, things like that. I think that was it.
Okay, so just a little bit on investments. We obviously we have a limited time with this video, but in general, young couples can assume greater risk when you're younger in age, which usually involves more stocks or equities than fixed incomes like bonds and stuff like that. But the important thing is to discuss your risk tolerance with each other, and there's guidelines for, depending on your age, what your mix should be between stocks and bonds and other types of investments. But ultimately, it's what makes sense to the two of you and what you're comfortable with, and what's going to make you sleep well at night, that you're not stressed about it when you go to bed. But in doing that, try to educate yourself. You may consider a financial advisor. There's a lot of different types out there. There's also a lot of good information online, that's available for free these days, as long as you can figure out what's good and reputable. Just be careful about cocktail party comments. Well, actually, with COVID, there's not many cocktail parties right now. But in terms of like rumors and what people are saying with your friends, and just be cautious of trends that don't always work out. In general, investing does not have to be complicated, although there's marketing out there that seem to want to make you believe that. But just simple diversification, low cost investments, automatic rebalancing over time, so that you have the breakout between your types of investments may change over time, so you rebalance that. And then steady behavior, like trying not to react to big things in the market and the news and stuff like that. Just try to be steady about it.
So just a couple of tips for you. One thing that you might want to consider doing is educating yourself about a will, and possibly consider writing a will. That way your wishes will be honored in the event of your death. I know that's hopefully a very long way away, but it's good to be prepared. The other thing is to review your beneficiaries and adjust them accordingly. A lot of times people get married and then they still leave their parents or their sibling as their beneficiary and forget to switch it over to their wife, and especially children once you have children. So you want to make sure that you're protecting your new family.
And that applies to like 401ks and
life insurance,
and things like
IRAs, 401ks. And the last thing is consider credit monitoring. There's a lot of identity theft out there, so having some kind of system, whether it's through Experian or LifeLock, that you get alerts if there's some change in your credit, and you can see your credit report on a regular basis, just to make sure that nothing funny is going on. In the handout that Joanne sent you, there's a budget template that you may find useful to create a budget. There's also a family emergency workbook, which is a great place to put all of your information and help you be organized in your financial life. And that way you know all your bank accounts, where everything is. You may want to give it to your parents as well, because there's a good chance your parents don't have that either.
And there's also some books that were recommended, or other sources of information.
Yes.
So in conclusion, money is definitely not everything, but it is important. And again, to try to avoid having it being stressful in your relationship. It does involve a lot of communication to make sure you understand each other about your perspective on money and how you handle it. It's good to talk about, especially as you start your marriage together. Define and understand your roles. What each other is good at, and hopefully they complement each other. And you probably don't know everything, and we certainly didn't when we got married. But look for qualified help when you need it. Understand that things change over time. Especially like when you decide to have children. That could change your financial plan quite a bit, of course, but also things like life insurance. So this is it's an ongoing process. And, overall, just take control of the money part of your marriage, and don't let it control you. Don't let it stress you out. Try to get your arms around it, like we said before. So I think that's it. Thanks. Thanks for watching, and I guess we'll meet everybody in a few weeks, right?
Yes.
All right. See ya.